Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another live stream. Happy Memorial Day to everybody out there that's tuning in. Make sure you guys like the stream. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. And if you're already subscribed, make sure you hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another stream like this, because we have a lot of fun on these streams. We talk about a lot of things. You got to be here. It's a very rare early rep stream. We don't really stream this early. I haven't streamed this early in years. And what we haven't also done in years is a call-in stream. And while I did promise that this would be a call-in stream and I tried to get the audio to work, we had some issues. So we are going to push it back to Wednesday, even though technically the streaming, we usually do it Tuesday, Thursday. This week we might do it Monday, Wednesday, so we can do our end of the month stream. And that one will probably be a long stream and calling will happen. So you guys should be there. If you guys want to call into the stream, join the Discord. It's at redeaglepatriot.com. You guys can sign up. And yes, technically the call-in tier is $10 a month, but for the first few streams, just so people can get acquainted to it, we're going to be opening the doors for pretty much everybody to call in when we do it. And while that is also true, it is important to note that just because you do join the Discord, there's a chance not everybody will get to call in. It's not like the old days where we just had like 100 people watching the stream at its peak. Right now we have over that pretty much, and we've been streaming for a minute on like no notice. So that kind of should tell you where we're at in terms of the channel. But hopefully we can get to everybody, like the speed run, ask questions, get to the people, see what their reasoning is. Everybody listens to me as if I'm an ideologue, which technically I am. I'm a commentator. We talk about a lot of important political issues, but we also need to get directly to the people and see what they exactly have to say. Where are they coming from exactly when it comes down to 2024, all these other high profile important issues, to kind of get the pulse on the base, because it does seem as if the rep base is pretty much in line with a lot of these Republican primary voters. It does seem as if we have a lot of similarities and trends regarding even like polls I put out on the community tab, and coinciding with what we see in these polls in the real world, I guess. And this poll right here came out that I think we are going to touch on because it is important. And this was out of YouGov. And they showed back in December, Ron DeSantis up by just 8 percentage points, but now Donald Trump is up by 32. DeSantis is down there in the head-to-head, which usually DeSantis does better percentage-wise in the head-to-heads. He's down there at 28%. And this is with all sorts of things. Your announcement supposed bump. Where's the announcement bump? I don't exactly see it. Technically, some of this poll was before the announcement per se, but the latter half of this poll was when people were knowing about the announcement. And there's not going to be an announcement bump. If DeSantis sees a bump, it's largely going to be because he's spending a lot of money in these early states. And people do need to understand that when it comes down to the whole Trump DeSantis thing, it's not necessarily going to be a massive like cakewalk. I do expect Trump to decisively win the primary, but keep in mind that DeSantis is going to try everything in his power to spend as much money as possible, divide the party. But the bottom line is, the more that people get acquainted with DeSantis and the more people understand what is really the purpose of his campaign, who's propping it up, the lower that his ceiling gets, and honestly, the lower his floor gets. And it's already bottoming out right now. We'll see if he's able to recover. But you look at even some of the polls out of Iowa, New Hampshire, that's where he's spending a lot of money and has spent money via his super PAC. Even before he announced, you saw people, I got comments saying, I get DeSantis ads on your YouTube videos. I get Biden ads on your YouTube videos. And while that's all true, it's funny because of the fact that they're spending money already. In the case of Ron DeSantis, didn't even have a campaign fully announced. But I mean, it is what it is. So we'll see what happens in the coming months. And we're going to talk about it during this live stream. We're going to get to the super chats. I want to get the people in the mix as much as we possibly can. It's Memorial Day. A lot of people are home. A lot of people are just chilling and vibing and doing their thing. Maybe they're barbecuing right here in the state of Texas. It's currently raining outside, so it's not really a barbecue friendly environment, at least right now. I mean, the weather changes so quickly here, as it pretty much does everywhere, but um, especially here. So we'll get to that, but it is Memorial Day, and it wouldn't be a complete Memorial Day stream if I didn't talk about the importance of Memorial Day, because it is a very, very important holiday, and we have it for a very important reason, because we honor those who lost their lives in battle, hence the term Memorial Day, those that paid the ultimate sacrifice serving this country. And the real takeaway that people need to have, that I think the right needs to pivot to, because we do all of the traditional, obligatory, respect the fallen posting, which is good. And I engaged in that today to a certain extent. But it's also important to note that we had so many people pay the ultimate sacrifice. And then you look at what's happening to our country right now. I mean, this is a whole nother battle. And I'm really happy that Donald Trump actually took to Truth Social to go out there and say this in a way, because he mentioned this in his statement, which is something that not a lot of politicians do. And it's kind of like vintage Trump in a way. And we've seen a lot of vintage Trump lately. But finally, we have certain politicians that are going out there and that are talking about this. And it's important because we have another fight on our hands. And so many people paid the ultimate sacrifice so they would see their country be the best version of it possible. That's what they were fighting for. But you look at what we're seeing around us, it's like you have a lot of veterans that are like, I didn't fight for this. I didn't fight for this. And especially those that paid the ultimate sacrifice in World War II or even wars before that. If they saw what was happening to our country right now, they would be ultimately just very angry, as many of them are if they're still alive today and paying attention. So it's important to understand that we have a responsibility on our hands to make sure that we can have the nation that so many people died for, that so many people fought for years and years on. And this was the Trump statement. And it's funny because even some of the people in the DeSantis camp were a little bit angry about this, but he said, happy Memorial Day to all, but especially to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for the country they love, and to those in line of a very different but equally dangerous fire, stopping the threats of terrorists, misfits, and lunatic thugs who are working feverishly from within to overturn and destroy our once great country, which has never been in greater peril than it is right now. We must stop the communists, Marxists, and use the word fascist pigs at every turn and make America great again. And that's very true, because the fight extends to what we see with our current state of our country, the current state of our culture today. What did these people exactly fight for? They fought so we would have the society that they worked so hard to build. And we had that during the 1950s. You had an era of prosperity after World War II. And then you see all of this social decline happen, the rise of social liberalism, social Marxism, all of these things, indoctrination in schools, the Marxist takeover of our institutions, the infiltration, what you see happening to our culture. And it's like, there's a reason why we had so many people lie down our lives for this country, because they believed it was worth protecting. They believed it was worth fighting for. And then you look at what has happened recently in the culture. You look at what's happening to our society today, and we're fighting a very different fight. It may not exactly be a physical fight, although at times we see that in our streets, and we obviously disavow any sort of violence. Mainly it comes from the opposition, but it's true, 100% true. Did you look at our society? Is this what people sacrificed their lives for on the battlefield in World War II? Did they storm Normandy for what is happening right now in our society? They did not. They did not. And if you showed them what would happen to our great nation, how many would still have fought exactly? That's another question. So it's very sad, and it honestly makes the whole thing sadder when you look at the big picture. That's why we have to fight to restore our great nation. We have to restore it to what it once was. Not exactly what it once was, because we're not going to go back in a 1-to-1 ratio. We got to build something else. That's kind of what we have to do. But we have to build the best version of our country, bigger and better than ever before, to paraphrase the former and potentially, hopefully, future president whose truth post is currently on the right side of the screen. And that's true. So we are going to get into this primary battle for sure, but it's just important that we touch base on the importance of Memorial Day and why we need to fight to ensure that we can have the best country, a country that's worth fighting for, that so many people may have sacrificed their lives for, just to have it slip away into the hands of these radical leftists, Marxists, social Marxists, as President Trump put it right here in this truth post. So, speaking of the former president, we're going to delve into some of this primary polling because it seems like this is a recurring theme. And you're looking at this. Trump had some really bad things happen politically, whether if it was the midterms, which is not entirely his fault because you have so many people that still believe the nonsense. Well, all these Trump people lost, but all the non-Trump people lost. And it's like, who exactly were the people that won in the midterms? They weren't like these rhinos exactly. Like they were these people who had their foot in both doors of the camps. And usually they were the incumbents. And some of the non-Trump people that were non-incumbents that ran also got shellacked as well. And they don't want to touch base on that. They don't want to talk about that because it doesn't really fit their narrative. And then like the pro-Trump incumbents, people like Ron Johnson, for example, won in Wisconsin, despite Republicans not having really the best turnout among Trump's base in Wisconsin. And you saw that affect the gubernatorial race there. But it is what it is. You had the midterms. They were not beneficial politically to Trump, no matter which way you spin it. I acknowledge that it wasn't, even though it wasn't his fault, because you have so many people in the media that lie and run with that narrative because it's exactly what they've just been told to regurgitate. In many cases, these people in the media get paid by these super PACs. They get paid by the Republican establishment. And even in the case of, for example, you look at the Daily Wire, they take donations directly at the hands of Ron DeSantis in many cases. And that's Donald Trump's number one political opponent. So you see that. Then Trump gets indicted for nothing, basically, for something that's undoubtedly a witch hunt. And even if Trump did something wrong, it's still not a criminal case, and it is well past the statute of limitations. And then New York changes laws regarding the statute of limitations so they could get Trump and successfully sue him for what they call sexual abuse, despite having zero evidence and them clearing Trump of some abuse cases, but they still sue him for defamation of this woman who I think did at most took a picture with Trump, and then Trump completely goes on CNN in the town hall, obliterates the narrative. You see that there. But you look at all these things that are supposed to bring him down for good. It's the same thing we've seen. It's the same movie from 2015, 2016, even parts of his presidency up until now. It's literally just the redux. It's witnessing history repeat itself. The only difference is Donald Trump is polling much better now. Donald Trump has his foot in the door. He understands the swamp much better than he did during his presidency and during his initial campaign. He's also more measured, but he still brings the fire when he needs to. He still brings the zingers when he needs to. And as a result, he's winning. He was down by 8 in the head-to-head in December. And now he's up by 32. And a lot can change. And I'm sure DeSantis is going to spend a ridiculous amount of time in Iowa instead of being governor of Florida. He's going to be spending a lot of money in Iowa. And maybe he's going to gain a little bit here and there. But still, at the end of the day, Donald Trump has the trajectory working in his favor. It'll be interesting to monitor the polls in the coming months for sure. But as of right now, the dude's been hit with everything. He's at 60%. In the polls. He's at 60 right now. He's not like he's in the mid to high 40s. No, he's at 60. And in many polls, he is above 60 in a crowded field as well. And even if you want to say, well, that's because he's like the former president. Well, either way, it doesn't exactly matter if he's the former president or not. Oh, it's low for a former president. Yeah, well, I mean, there's going to be people in the primary in a crowded field who are going to look for other options. The truth is he's not an incumbent president. He is somebody who is still, by and large, the most popular figure in the Republican Party, and he's trouncing other people who are usually or were seen as the popular figures that could be a successor to Trump. A lot of people saw DeSantis as that natural successor, even though I think when you look into it a little bit further and you look into his record in Congress and his lack of charisma and things like that, it does kind of cast doubt on his ability to win. But when he's been seen as this unknown who just makes positive headlines and as governor of Florida because he's governor of a large state and has a very good PR team working for him, a lot of people did view him as the natural successor. But now that he's actually throwing his hat in the ring and he's actually running and he's attacking Trump and he's getting attacked by Trump even harder than he's attacking Trump, it's not looking good for him. He's being called out for his flaws and what may actually be flaws in terms of his electability, so to speak, because they always talk about what's electable. And it's like DeSantis couldn't even capitalize off of his massive midterm victory, where a lot of candidates that were backed by Donald Trump more vigorously, I guess you would say, didn't do so well. He couldn't capitalize off of that to lead a sustained lead in the polls and to take control. And honestly, you talk about the window of announcement. If he announced then, he probably would be polling a little bit better. But now that he's waited so long and had the most atrocious announcement I think we've ever seen in recent political history, where you had a Twitter space that didn't even work for 30 minutes. And then he gets in there and it's a total snooze fest. And even some of his own supporters are scratching their heads saying, what's going on? It's like, yeah, not really the best look. Donald Trump will likely be the nominee, all hands down. But not only that, he's probably going to go out there and he's probably going to win by, sizable margins in these first states. And he probably is going to campaign a lot less than DeSantis and a lot less than some of these other people, which again, I think he should be campaigning as much as possible. I think he should be doing exactly what he did in 2016, going to all these little small towns, meeting with people. I think that definitely is something that is going to sway it in his favor. And I think he can. Obviously, it's early on. It's May. He doesn't need to be going out there and doing all that. He could still draw big crowds, can draw bigger crowds than Ron DeSantis for sure. Even in these small towns, obviously. You look, if DeSantis was somebody who actually could draw a very large crowd for his rallies, he probably would not have announced in a Twitter space that probably got, I believe when he actually started talking, it got less than the space with RFK Jr., who is polling at like 15, 20% in the Democrat primary, which is something we also could touch base on, because it's also important because you have Biden over there. And if you're going to be talking about the general election, Biden, the poll came out yesterday where, imagining a crowded Democrat field, and he's only at 24% in the Democrat poll, which again, that is with a bunch of other people in the poll that are probably not going to run. For example, I think they had Michelle Obama in the poll among other people. But even when you poll him against RFK Jr., and Marianne Williamson, the crazy crystal lady, who's probably going to get some of the diehard Bernie bro supports that probably would go to Bernie Sanders if Bernie decided to run at his ridiculously old age yet again, which is obviously not going to happen. But you want to look at that, and it's like, okay, well, Biden's polling at like 59% in the polls. Trump is polling it like in the mid to high 50s as well. So you have an incumbent president who is polling not even around this, or not even much higher than the leader of the opposition party that's going to have like a wide open clown car field. You have all these people pouring in the race: Nikki Haley, DeSantis, Tim Scott. I don't know if Mike Pence is going to join. It's probably a little bit too late. I think that you look at somebody like Scott and Haley, they're kind of like the placeholders for where Pence actually would be in the polls. But you're looking at that and it's just like, okay, yeah, it's pretty obvious Trump's going to be the nominee, and Biden not exactly polling at a certain, at a certain level. It's definitely going to bode problems. I believe one of those 13 keys that people talk about is the incumbency effect, because the incumbency is a positive, but also there's another key that says if you have a contested primary, your support goes down. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I'm not somebody who would support RFK Jr. for president, but if he's going to actually get about a good quarter of that vote in the Democrat primary, that's definitely going to cause some problems for Biden in the general election, for sure. I'm not saying it's going to cause a ridiculous amount of problems or it's going to make him dead on arrival, but for sure, that's not something you want to happen. In this primary, for example, if it was just Trump running and everybody threw their support behind him and you didn't have Ron DeSantis in the mix, well, Trump would probably stand a better shot in the general because he can immediately campaign for it, which honestly, he's doing anyways. I mean, for the most part, he doesn't really have to pivot. You watch him in that CNN town hall. For the most part, what he was saying was, talking points that he was using that would benefit him in a general election, whether if it was him talking about Ukraine, and he handled that perfectly. He handled the, even issue like abortion, he handled perfectly. He's not going to give any, meat to the other side that they would be able to use against him on that issue by him navigating the issue in a way that is politically effective for him to do. And that's something that you're going to have to do. You don't want to drum up the other side a little bit too much. And he wasn't doing that. And that's something positive. Whereas you have somebody like DeSantis who's going to try to run to the right in the primary, and then he's going to try to flip-flop to Bill Clinton's position in the general. And I said this on the last stream. I'm like, he's going to basically publicly admit that he's going to do the Hillary Clinton thing, where it's like, I have a private position and a public position on everything. It's like, what's going on here? Because that just shows that you're a part of the swamp. That shows that you are one of these politicians, and all they care about is trying to, please the masses enough to get elected. And usually it doesn't work. And in this case, it's going to not work even in the slightest in this Republican primary. So absolutely. So super chats, we're going to get to the super chats here. We're going to get to what people have to say. We only have one super chat so far. Mole Playing Rough says, what would a Jack Francis House tenure be like? It probably, I don't know. Probably would be along the lines of somebody like, a Gosar's tenure, somebody that's just going to be that hardliner who takes all the right positions on issues and might cause a little bit of chaos here and there. I guess like a Matt Gaetz, who might be a little bit more socially conservative, definitely get the headlines for sure here and there. But I don't know. I don't know if running for Congress is necessarily in the cards. A little bit too young for that, but we'll have to see what happens there. So Real Texan Politics says, this may or may not be a hot take, but the conservatives need our own version of Rage Against the Machine. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Is it not like a band or something? I don't know. But either way, I think the conservatives need to understand who their base is, and they need to understand how to relate to them. And if you're going to be like Ted Cruz today, and you're going to spend, all of your resources tweeting about gay sex in the middle of nowhere in Africa, that's not something that's going to help you gain any voters. I'm sorry, whether you think that their laws are a little bit too extreme or not. Let's be real here. I mean, we've seen this for decades upon decades in the Middle East and Africa, and just wasting time and resources on Memorial Day tweeting about that, not exactly the best look. And we see this time and time again with pandering. They pander to voters who don't vote for them, and then those voters still don't vote for them, and then they just lose support with their own base. So there's a lot we need to do. We need to build a turnout operation. We need to actually target our own supporters and get them to turn out for elections. Otherwise, we're going to keep losing. And that's a massive problem because we've lost for so long, and everybody decides to take the wrong takeaways from every single loss. Oh, Blumph lost us 3 elections in a row. First of all, how could you exactly say that 2018 was a loss, but 2022 was also a loss when you had just the inverse happen in each election? I think that if anything, 2018 was a pretty standard midterm year for an incumbent president. And while 2022 for sure was underwhelming, we did retake the House. So I don't exactly know how you could chalk it up as like a total loss. And just the way you spin these things, I could sit back here and say, look, thanks to Donald Trump, Republicans retook the House. We flipped a crucial swing state governorship. We almost flipped New York, and we flipped Virginia in 2021. And the only reason why we didn't retake the Senate was because we had a very annoying, flamboyant son of one of the Senate candidates decide to sabotage him, and there was a snowstorm in Nevada. Like, I could say that, and all of that is true. It just depends on the way you spin it. And obviously, I think that either way, it's a bit disingenuous. We had an underwhelming performance. I don't think we need to sugarcoat it. But the correct takeaway isn't, oh, it's all Trump's fault. When if you look at the exit polls, even Trump was not a big issue for many voters, whether Republicans were winning in certain races or they were losing in certain races. So it's all about turnout. There's a reason why we underperform the polls for like the first time in over a decade. And that's because we don't know how to play the game to win. We spend more time just bashing our own that actually get it, which brings us to the Ken Paxton stuff, which I talked about it in the last video. I don't want to spend a ridiculous amount of time this video talking, or this live stream talking about it, but this guy has his own party go out there and promote the opposition to lead certain committees, but then they try to impeach Paxton because of the fact that Paxton called out the House Speaker for allegedly being a drunk idiot, which if you watch the video, it's apparently what he seemed to be. I mean, he made Joe Biden and John Fetterman look like the greatest speakers, the greatest public speakers in American history. If you watch that clip, that's how bad it was. And Paxton criticizes him. Paxton has these allegations of corruption in his closet that everybody knew about. They didn't care. They reelected him by like more than they elected Trump in 2016 by in Texas. He won by 10 points and probably would have won by 12, 13 if it wasn't for the third party in the mix. And all the money they spent attacking Paxton didn't exactly help him, but everybody knew about it. But he's beloved, the best AG in the country on every single issue, whether it's redistricting, immigration, social issues, election stuff. He's phenomenal. Everybody loves Ken Paxton. He won in a landslide for a reason, partially because the state of Texas knows how to turn out their voters, unlike the state of Arizona, for example, or Nevada, or Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, you name it. But they decide to impeach Paxton over that, and successfully, and most Republicans side with the enemy, knowing well that they're probably going to replace him with somebody like George P. Bush. And even if you want to say he's a little corrupt, it's like they're all corrupt. I mean, if you impeached every politician for what Paxton has done, you basically would have nobody left. And so much corruption happens in the swamp known as Austin, and we all know about that. But what do? They try to stab these authentic conservatives in the back as much as they possibly can for the sake of, oh, they're a little bit of a nuisance. They're calling us out. We got to protect ourselves, and we're in the good graces of the media, comparatively speaking. So that's all they care about. It's all about keeping up appearances. It's not about the brand of the party or electability, because in the case of Ken Paxton, he was hit with literally everything. He killed it in the primary, and also did very well in the general, better than I think a lot of people, myself included, really expected him to do. So you're looking at that and it's just like, okay, what are they trying to do? They're trying to remove somebody because they're effective. These people, what's the point of Republicans? Like, this is why people decide to abstain from elections, because they see no point in supporting this party, that all they do is stab their own and their most effective in the back, while they reward the opposition with committee positions that they don't even deserve. And obviously, I'm somebody who still believes that we got to vote, especially in general elections. Obviously, we have to continue to take over the party. You're not going to start a third party and have them go out there and win, especially overnight. It's not going to be effective, but it's like we have to do something, and there has to be an effort to oust these people in primaries or whatever, because they're removing somebody who's keeping the state a red state, and inevitably giving the left even more power than they're already giving them right now. So it's ridiculous. Texas and Austin in the swamp, there's a lot of rhinos there. You do a lot of things that are just awful, and this is one of them. And they're allowed to go out there and be drunk on the House floor as long as they happen to bend the knee to the opposition as well as the Republican establishment. And it's sad. And as a result, Ken Paxton, we'll see what happens in the state Senate, but he very may well be out of a job for something that, again, the voters had a referendum on him in the primary. He won it big over George P. Bush, Jeb's son, by the way. And he won the general election by a landslide, so to speak. In terms of modern day Texas, he outperformed Donald Trump in the state by 3-4 points. And that's with them spending all this money to oust him in the primary and in the general. Didn't make a difference at the end of the day. Talk about must suburbs. He outperformed Greg Abbott in a lot of the suburbs, and he only underperformed in South Texas. Partially, I think that's because George P. Bush spent a lot of his resources in the primary down there. But either way, it doesn't exactly matter. They tend to be more ancestrally Democrat down ballot anyways, and that would arguably be enough to make up that difference. And it is what it is. But either way, I'm just disgusted by the GOP at large. Their leadership is awful. And yeah, you have states that are more solid and they're more based and they don't do this stuff now. And it's a very good thing. You have a more conservative takeover of the state legislatures across the nation compared to 5 to 10 years ago. And that's a good thing. However, Texas, no, we still got a long way to go. And now they're removing Ken Paxton for what? For what exactly? Some remedial corruption, bribery charges that pretty much every politician likely has engaged in. Seriously? No, it's all about protecting themselves and stopping people that are actually effective. It's sad. So let's see. Way back says, who do you think Trump's VP pick will be? And then who do you think the best person for Trump's VP would be? I don't know who it's going to be. People are floating the names like Byron Donalds, Lee Zeldin, Elise Stefanik, Kristi Noem, Kim Reynolds. And I think that Trump is probably going to be more inclined to pick a woman this time around, which I think he needs to pick the best person for the job. There's no reason to engage in this political correctness or try to, mimic what the opposition does. And hopefully he picks somebody based off of their merits. But if you're going to go with a woman, I probably would go with Kim Reynolds because she is a popular governor. She is likable. She is from the Rust Belt or the extension of the Rust Belt. She's from the Midwest. That definitely helps out a lot. And economically speaking, she's a much better fit for the Midwest than somebody like Kristi Noem, who I think is a little bit, has some issues, mainly on social issues. She caves to her donors a lot, and that's not a good thing. But I think Reynolds would be decent. I know she's going to be agnostic on the primary, which I understand if you're from Iowa. It's probably the smart thing to do there in that state. And it's possible that because she's friendly with Trump that he would consider selecting her. I know people are saying she already said she doesn't want to be VP, but DeSantis also said he didn't want to run for president. So what exact difference does it really make there? These things change over time. So absolutely. Sean McAllister, thank you for the 5. Charles Turner Jr. says in 2025, hopefully a solid-based Republican majority will be in both houses. Paul Gosar should introduce a bill to cap all immigration for a minimum of 25 years. Hopefully, Obergefell gets overturned. And I hope Obergefell does get overturned. And Ken Paxton is somebody that's worked overtime to make sure that that would actually happen with some of these lawsuits that he's raised. And that's a very good thing. And it does need to be overturned. It was decided very wrongly. There was no reason for it to be decided that way in the first place. Misinterpretation of the Constitution. It should be kicked back to the states. And even then, the sad thing about that is it's going to take a lot of time for states to actually, revert back to their positions in the early 2000s. And people are going to be like, well, why is this an issue? It doesn't exactly affect you or whatever. And it's like, it does. It really does. There's a reason why a large supermajority of people in the 2000s consistently voted to ban gay marriage in referendums in states. You think everybody just woke up one day and decided, oh, well, we were vehemently opposed to this for all this time. Oh, looks like we got to do the right thing and support this because, it doesn't affect anybody. It's like, no, it's because of a long campaign by our opposition to change people's minds. They've been very slow about it, but they've been very effective. And what we need to do is just say, yeah, it's not exactly working for me. This is not exactly how this works. It desecrates what marriage actually means. It was a man and a woman coming together to produce, in many cases, produce life. And that was what marriage was for centuries upon centuries upon centuries. And they've completely just changed the entire meaning of that to placate a very select, small portion of the population. And it's clearly not about, just two people, having the same rights or whatever, because if that was the case, they'd be fine with something like civil unions, but they haven't exactly been fine with civil unions. I wonder why. Okay. And that's just one aspect of society that's changed vastly. You ask people in the 1980s, 1990s, what they thought on it, you probably get 80, 90% of people saying, no, that's wrong. Marriage is between a man and a woman. But now you're cast out of many right-wing circles nowadays if you happen to say that you believe that marriage should legally be between one man and one woman. So it's sad what's happening overall to even the right, because they just don't stand up for anything. They cave on everything, and they keep caving on everything, and they keep giving the opposition everything they want and then some. It's like we're Santa Claus giving them gifts on Christmas all the time. It's like, what's even the point of being a Republican if this is what you are going to be doing nonstop? That's what I say. You look at what happens in Texas trying to impeach Ken Paxton. Who does that appease the most? The left, because you're losing the strongest Republican attorney general. But my remedial corruption scandal that literally every politician has had. Why don't you impeach the opposition for their scandals and launch probes into them? Because that's all they do to us, and we let them do it, but we don't do it to them for some reason. I wonder why. So American Patriot says the Paxton situation looks like a swamp play to hijack the 2024 contest from Trump. Paxton is big on contesting election integrity and other MAGA priorities. Well, absolutely. Like I said, he's effective. And while Texas is likely not going to flip in 2024, it can flip in the future. And they know that. So they're trying to limit how effective that the more popular Republicans are in this state so they can try to gain power at an even higher level. And we just cannot let that happen. We can't let it happen. It's sad. So we'll have to see what happens in the Senate, which brings us to this super chat. Sam Madsen says, does the Senate have the votes to convict? They'll need to convict by a 2-to-1 majority, or I believe they need 67% of the Senate. They're probably going to get all the Democrats to do it. And a majority of Republicans, a super majority of Republicans in the state House did vote to impeach him. But we'll see what happens with the Senate trial. It's possible you have a different outcome. Paxton has said that he is confident that they are going to prevail. But I mean, is that just political confidence that doesn't end up amounting to anything? It's possible. So we'll just have to see what goes down in the Senate when it's all said and done. But it's sad, man. It's just sad that that's what they're spending their time on. You have this drunk moron. He gets called out for being one. And then what exactly happens? He tries to impeach the guy who's calling him out for abusing his power by claiming that this guy's abusing his power. Yeah, whatever. Let's see. I don't believe we have any more super chats for the moment, but feel free to send them in. We'll probably go for another 15 to 20 minutes. I'm not going to be streaming that late. Like I said, this was supposed to originally have been a call-in stream. If you guys want to call into the next stream, which will be a call-in stream, make sure you guys go ahead and make sure that you join the website at redeaglepolitics.com. I'll put that in chat, because for just $5 a month or 16 cents a day, you get access to my exclusive videos. Not only that, you guys can call in, and technically, like I said, it is the $10 a month tier to call in. But for the first few streams, I think we're just going to get as many people as we possibly can to join. We'll kind of give you guys a free for all for the $5 a month tier. And then if some people want to eventually, go up to the $10 a month tier, they can. Or if it's just super popular, then we might change things up. Either way, I don't know what we're going to do, but make sure you guys do sign up. I'll put the link in chat right there, and we'll pin it so you guys will be able to see where it is. We'll have our mods in there screening the calls, making sure everybody is not doing a little bit of trolling. I mean, some people like to do a little bit of trolling, and we're definitely a lot bigger now than when we last did the call-in stream. So we'll make sure that as minimal people as possible are engaging in doing a little bit of trolling. So yeah, Ken Paxton. You got new 2024 polls, which again, interactive polling is a must follow for those out there on the just on Twitter in general, because they kind of have aggregated. I don't know if they're exactly pro-Trump. I think they are pro-Trump in the primary, but either way, they showcase the net swings towards Trump overall, which I think is impressive. And you look at this, and it seems like Trump is now more popular in the Republican primary field than DeSantis. And it shows, because Trump is an 81% approval. That's also his ceiling. And even though a lot of people like Ron DeSantis, and I understand you've gotten some people here and there saying, why are you being so critical? Let him duke it out. And I agree with that to an extent. I sympathize. They should duke it out, but they have to understand that it's an unnecessary divide on the party. And I'm also just looking at who's elevating this guy and egging him on to run at the national level. It's all the worst people, folks. It's all the people that Trump opposed in the 2016 primary. Many of them either voted for Hillary in 2016 or sat it out, voted for McMullen, or like maybe reluctantly voted for him, but still trashed him up to the last minute. It's like, just look at who's in his corner. And then you look at largely the people in Trump's corner. Like, who's your rhino in Trump's corner? Oh, like Lindsey Graham. Like, oh, give me a break. Like, seriously, you have one guy. And I don't like Lindsey Graham, but Trump, at least now, is openly rebuking Lindsey to his face. He didn't do that during his presidency. And he definitely, hasn't done that since the 2016 campaign when Graham was an open never Trumper. So it's like, okay, if somebody's the best, or not the best senator, but the most popular senator from an early state, or just a popular senator in general from an early state, and they endorse you, I don't think it's probably a good thing to openly, like, fully decline their endorsement or whatever. You do have to build some sort of bridges to get to the next stage in politics. And that's pretty much how it works. And we see a lot of bridge burning from the other side as well with the DeSantis camp. And he's already at a disadvantage, and he's acting like a campaign that is just struggling to breathe for air at this point, to the point where it's not like, you don't act like this if you're going to win. He's acting like he's 35 points behind and the primaries tomorrow. And he's just like, and they're just like, maybe not Ron himself, but they're all acting like bitter children. The people around him, the DeSimps, term I coined, by the way. Not a lot of people know that. The biggest fans, the diehard fans who spend all their time on Twitter and just trash Trump all day. But you look at where the ceilings are. Like I said, Trump has already a lot of support in his corner, to the point where it's like, he's not like having a massive defection to the point where DeSantis has a lot of room to grow. And a lot of those people who might like DeSantis still are voting for Trump in the primary, which definitely should tell you a lot. And this was not the case probably after the midterms. DeSantis had a higher approval rating, even though it was soft approval. Now Donald Trump nationally has the edge by a sizable margin nationwide in the favorability gap, which is a good thing. And even so, the general election, he has a higher favorability rating in a lot of polls than Joe Biden. And even if you want to say, well, people that oppose both are all going to vote for Biden, which again, that's unfounded, and it's debunked by those same polls. And the national polls were accurate for the most part in 2022. It was the state polls that were wrong. It's like, you look into it and it's like, where's the evidence for it? Because they're just trying to speculate. And even if it's true and those independents who don't like both still vote for Biden, they're still breaking for Biden by less than they broke for Biden by in 2020. And when you have Trump losing by 43,000 votes across 3 states, that would be enough to get Donald Trump the victory and then some. So it's like, yeah, okay. It is what it is, but they just don't get it. You look at some of these other polls and it seems like Trump in the averages, and this was a few days ago, where's the announcement bump for Ron DeSantis? I don't see one. And there haven't been a whole lot of polls conducted after it, or actually, I think there have been several that have been conducted after that still have Donald Trump in the lead. And the only one that's kind of like on the fence is the Marquette one. But here's the deal with the Marquette poll that came out. They had DeSantis winning by like 40 something points, like in January. And now Trump is up in the head to head. So they're the outlier. And even in that outlier, Trump is still winning. So it seems like he definitely has the upper hand. Let's see any new super chats. We have some new ones here. Let's see. Sam Madsen said the Senate is much more conservative than the House, though. I've heard that, and that may be true. So like I said, it's possible you have a trial and you have a chamber that is probably more favorable to Paxton, that he does actually survive. But either way, it should never have to come to this to begin with. And it will be a massive victory if he is acquitted in the Senate. But the fact that it's come to this in and of itself is nothing short of a disaster and a disgrace. So American Patriot says, maybe you answered this in a previous video. Do you think Trump will win the initial primary states? I think he probably wins all of them. Maybe Florida, you could make a case for going to DeSantis. But even then, a poll came out with Trump and DeSantis tied. And that's from, I believe, a Karl Rove aligned poll. So if that's the best they can do in a Karl Rove aligned poll, and then there's other polls in Florida that has Trump up by 8, Trump up by 20, there's a chance DeSantis doesn't even win Florida. And if you're banking your whole entire primary campaign on a narrow win in your home state, you're not going to be the nominee. Texas probably does vote for Trump in the primary. Look, Paxton winning the runoff big. I think that's kind of going to mirror what we're about to see between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis in Texas. And Texas would be a state where DeSantis would probably like to win or get a sizable majority in. But it's like, I just think that Trump has the upper hand in like all of these states. Even you could make a case for Florida. Now, Iowa, New Hampshire, DeSantis is going to waste a lot of money trying to climb into first place in them. So it's possible that maybe Trump's margin of victory is not the highest, but he's still likely going to crack 50 in both, if not even 60, and if not even 70 before you would even talk about him losing. And definitely a lot can change between now and then. I'm not saying that it can't, but we'll see. And then we even have people in chat saying, why are you pro-Trump but not DeSantis? First of all, let me just say this. DeSantis as governor of Florida has done some positive things, whether it's redistricting or some of these other things that he signed. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is this is a guy who is taking the bait from the establishment to run, divide the party, trying to get rid of Trump for the wrong reasons. And that's why I don't support him in the primary. And the people that are supporting him are, by and large, some of the worst the GOP has to offer, whether you're talking about Jeb Bush, Paul Ryan, Fox News, Karl Rove, all these other people. They're in the DeSantis camp. And people need to know that. And when you look into some of the things that he's been leaked saying, that he's basically got a private and a public position when it comes to abortion, or he's going to like flip-flop on it. It's leaked audio, but it's going to happen, trying to like get donors on his side. It's a big mess. And he's just already down by so much. And there's so much that he has not been attacked on yet. It's not exactly going to work out. And then we talk about the electability argument, because I also believe Trump is more electable than Ron DeSantis in a lot of these states that determine the outcome of the election, which so many people just laugh off or say that that's ridiculous or that's just like nonsense given midterms or whatever. But you talk about who's going to energize the turnout in the Rust Belt, the Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, because Trump can get those two states and win, whereas DeSantis is going to need Arizona and Georgia, which are not sure things, and then like Wisconsin and Nevada. And honestly, you look at him in Wisconsin, especially after a divisive primary with Trump, I just don't see it happening. It's going to be the Tim Michels result all over again. And even though people are like, Michels was endorsed by Trump and lost, it's like he also was not really a good candidate whatsoever. And he didn't really have a lot in common with Trump. He ran a very generic campaign, and maybe he touched base on some cultural issues here and there, the same way DeSantis does. And it's like, yeah, interesting. It doesn't exactly guarantee you a victory. It really doesn't when it's all said and done. And we kind of saw that happen. He kind of fell flat on his face and weighed down Ron Johnson and almost gave the Senate seat up to a black nationalist named Mandela Barnes, who basically called the founding of America evil on the 4th of July. So Dallas Sucks 69 says Josh Hawley's new book is fire. I've not read it. Maybe I should. Agent Gabe, we love Gabe, says KGB has personal beef with Dade Phelan. Horrible dude. Everyone in chat should call his office and press him to resign. Well, he's not going to. They probably get a lot of calls. They've probably gotten a lot of calls already just because of the Ken Paxton thing. And as a result, you look at that and he's not going to step down. He's not going to resign. He could be drunk on the House floor for all they care. You know, you have this double-tiered system in politics where the establishment's able to go out there, get away with everything. But the second that you have one little speck of dirt in the past of somebody who happens to be a little bit more anti-establishment or going against the grain, everybody, the left, the establishment, right, you name it, the donor class will do everything they can to oust them, throw them under the bus. It's honestly sad. especially in the state of Texas. And we saw that with Paxton, and we're probably going to see it a lot more if they actually get what they want here and get the verdict in the Senate that they want, because it sets precedents. In fact, we need to be going after the opposition. They're the ones that are destroying this country, but the GOP establishment in many cases is complicit with them because they go along with whatever they say. They promote those people. Like, you see people like MTG being removed from committees. Steve King was ousted basically from Congress over an out of context hit job. And the best they can do is maybe take Ilhan Omar off of one committee because of something that she said about Israel or something like that. So we have a lot of work to do, and we have to go on offense. Why is AOC has a lot of these, I wouldn't say bribery, but like campaign finance corruption in her closet as well. They haven't tried to get her, despite her being vocal and somebody that's, effective at moving the Overton window on the left, out of Congress. That would be a massive victory for Republicans, but they haven't done that. They haven't gone out there and tried to get rid of her. They haven't even effectively tried to get rid of Omar. All they could do is take her off of one committee. So it shows you how ineffective they are, and they'd rather vote to take people like MTG off of her committees, or people like or engage in the slander allegations against Matt Gaetz, or go after people like Steve King and all these other people, because all they do is punch right. They don't want to punch left, despite the left actually being the ones who are destroying our country as we speak, and it's very sad. So Nick H says Wisconsin rurals will never vote like Ohio's. Well, I think there's still room to grow. I mean, saying they'll never vote like Ohio's, they've moved vastly to the right in recent years. But the reason why they're not going to vote like Ohio's is because the GOP is just that bad when it comes down to a lot of things, messaging, turnout. And the Ohio State GOP is fairly competent. I mean, Ohio had rural areas that were, or white working class areas that were voting Democrat in 2008 and even the 2018 Senate race. But still, they're voting hard to the right now. And it's very possible that you will see Wisconsin get redder because of the rurals. And it's not even just the rurals, because it's kind of a straw man argument that people make, like, oh, we're going to shift the rurals, 40 points right on a map, and then we'll move like all the WOW counties like 20 points, and the state moves left, or moving them to the left. But you look into the subdemography of the WOW counties, the Republicans still have a very high floor in places like Washington and Waukesha, especially because of the fact that you have such a high percentage of the population that is white working class, your Trump voter base there. And nobody ever seems to really talk about it, but it's true. And there's also these other smaller metros, Green Bay area, the area in the Fox cities, the Bow counties as well. So there's definitely a lot of room to grow in Wisconsin. But the bottom line is Republicans don't try to do that. And look at what happens there, what they spend their energy, time, and resources on, their messaging. It's awful. So there is a lot of work to do, but I think that we can win at the end of the day, based off of the fact that we do have a lot of energy on our side. And if Trump is the nominee, he can kind of sort of buck those trends to a certain extent, because he is such a transformational figure. And this is something that DeSantis people don't really seem to understand. And even if they're like, well, Youngkin doing better in the rurals proves that DeSantis can, it's like Youngkin had more charisma. He actually spoke and seemed more genuine and talked about like a wide variety of issues that people cared about. DeSantis goes up in the Twitter space and robotically rambles on about, oh, he's a good governor because of, I don't know, he passed some remedial anti-woke bill and says woke 1,000 times. And again, we support those bills. I think they don't go far enough, actually. But if you're going to be running your presidential campaign by just saying the word woke 30,000 times, it makes you look like a single issue individual. And it's no different than, for example, if you're going to be running your 2024 campaign on like the 2020 election or something like that. And it's like the reason why the anti-SJW movement on YouTube failed was because they really didn't know how to navigate these things, other than sort of understanding that there was a problem and then like complaining about it. But they didn't actually have any solutions to the problem. They weren't really that intellectual. And then you saw the rise of the left-wing YouTubers, even though they're pretty much in disarray now too. And they were just like dunking on the anti-SJW crowd. So it's what it comes down to. You need to bring substance, which is true, and DeSantis claims to be doing that, but you also have to articulate it in a manner that's going to appeal well to the masses. And Donald Trump does that, and he brings the substance when he's doing his policy videos or whatever. And he's also having a lot of the, proper solutions to the anti-woke issues if you watch his Twitter policy videos. But so many people just gloss over those and pretend that all he does is whine about an election that happened 3 years ago on Truth Social. And that's not entirely true. That's very disingenuous. And we can't let them win that narrative war. And we can't. But if we were going to talk about electability, people also need to understand it does come down to turnout. Whoops, we had a little error there. So I said, when it comes down, it all comes down to turnout. And if you're able to get more ballots in the ballot box than your opposition, you are going to win hands down. And Republicans seem to care more about this appeal to independence more so than actually energizing voters who will be on your side, whether they're independents or not, based off of appealing to them. And as a result, they keep losing. The messaging has been awful ever since 2016. And Trump has somehow tried to rectify that with his recent messaging, which I think has been awesome. But so many people are just glossing over it and pretending like he can't win or whatever. So it is what it is, guys. I'm just done with so many of these people, but they've been quiet lately, which is why it's kind of a shorter stream, but I kind of want to still get to what people are saying. Got a big rest of the day ahead. Going to watch the Vegas Golden Knights advance to the Stanley Cup. Hopefully we'll have to see what happens, but hopefully we'll see that happen. So Charles Turner Jr. says, not only are rhinos bad, but also are neocons like Ben Shapiro and conservative Inc. outlets Fox News, The Blaze, Daily Wire, PragerU, TPUSA. Well, yeah, there are good people in those organizations. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say the whole organizations top to bottom are like evil or whatever. No, we obviously can control them and get solid people in them. And we've worked on that to a certain extent, but there is a lot of swampiness in pretty much every single organization on the right, and they just don't get it. And you have the neocons. You also have the libertarians who believe that it's a virtue to cave on literally every single social issue. And the type of people that are like, oh, well, the new rainbow flag is bad, but the old one is like conservative or whatever. It's just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, return to tradition. They have the rainbow flag as like that's tradition in their view. Ridiculous. All they do is they're just like five years behind the left. And those people don't really have a place on the right, and they don't exactly help expand the coalition. You have to take a stand on certain things, but obviously, yeah, pick your battles. Don't get me wrong. Pick the battles effectively, but also understand the importance of like actually standing our ground and not caving on certain issues that are not worth caving on. So let's see. Noel Chapman says, are you a fan of Glenn Youngkin, and would he be a strong candidate for 2028? I think his ceiling is probably VP material. He's governor of Virginia, pretty good for a governor of Virginia. He's like acting like he's governor of Nebraska or something like that, which is good. And you love to see it in such a pro-Biden state. But I don't know about the national level. Like I said, just because you have people that are good at the state level doesn't instantly make them good at the national level. And that's also one of the reasons why I oppose Ron DeSantis for president. AR says, happy Memorial Day all. I want to say I used to be more of a fan of Shapiro, but watching him recently praise DeSantis is really turning me off, and it shows who he really is. Well, this is somebody who didn't vote in the 2016 election for president. He didn't vote for Trump. I believe he didn't vote for Hillary, but he just left it blank. And it's like, seriously, you're willing to just cede your vote? I don't care if you live in California or not. It doesn't exactly matter. That's a bad symbolic move you're making there. And it's like, yeah, you have somebody who was an ever-Trumper 2016 praising DeSantis, trying to get rid of Trump again at the first available opportunity. Yeah, it's obviously not a good thing. So Agent Gabe says, you ready for the star? I'm ready to see the Stars lose. That's what I'm ready to see. And everyone's going to call me a bandwagoner, and I understand why they'd think that. But like, I was a fan of Vegas since before the expansion draft even took place, which again, a lot of people didn't think they would do that well. And then the first year, it was like magical watching them make the run to the Stanley Cup finals, only to see them lose to Washington. But we've tried to go back ever since and finish the job. But, you know, we've always been stopped one way or another. But hopefully this time, I don't want to blow a 3-0 lead. That'd be embarrassing. So, Gran Panzer says Abbott passed the Crown Act. What are your thoughts on it? Personally, think it's a waste of time. The Crown Act. Let's see the Crown Act. Yeah, again, that's just a bad move. I mean, there's legit, because basically what it does is it's like banning, where if you have like certain hair that's unorthodox, like you can't discriminate based off of that. But it's like certain jobs require you to have a certain hairstyle. And that's just the way that it is. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're white or you're black or Hispanic or whatever. Like, take it from somebody that has hair that's more like black than white, like myself. It's never exactly been a problem for me. It shouldn't exactly be a problem for pretty much anybody. So it's ridiculous. It's a waste of time. Another example of Republicans spending more time doing the left's bidding for them in a state they desperately need to keep Republican. Disaster. Sam Madsen says, why has the messaging been so bad since 2016? What happened? What changed? I think a lot of it has been that we just got lost in the glory, and we saw, look, libs crying at inauguration, instead of like actually focusing on the forgotten men and women of America and looking at the original like Trump messaging and platform, and definitely just the infighting in Congress in the first year, and looking at the failures on things like healthcare and how they wanted to kind of just, I guess you would say, pivot more to the old style of like Reaganomics and things like that, which again, not saying like tax cuts are bad or anything like that. I do think that there's better ways to do tax cuts than others, but you know, it is what it is. Lions 1956 is a hot dog. A sandwich is Hillary vegan. I don't know if Hillary's vegan. She probably has a very strange diet that I'm not going to get into on live stream. But in terms of hot dogs being sandwiches, really depend on like what you put on it. If it's like one of those loaded hot dogs, I mean, maybe you could call it a sandwich, but if it's just like a hot dog, I wouldn't call it a sandwich. It's just a hot dog. Even if you want to say, oh, well, technically, because there's bread and meat, it's a sandwich, like whatever, it doesn't matter. So, all right, guys, this will be the last call for super chats, but I'm only going to go for 1 minute more because we've been going for an hour, which is probably about the amount that I wanted to go for. And I know it's a holiday, so we'll let you guys get back to your families or whatever, do whatever you need to do. So let's see. We'll just be waiting here for the next minute or so, seeing if anybody else sends anything else in. We'll do a little speed run, and we'll end the stream at 5:23 Central. So that would be in about a minute and a half. So, see, regular chat's talking about the Panthers. Yeah, I honestly will say if the Panthers win it all, I'm not going to be upset because of the fact that how impressive their run has actually been. Like, if they actually beat the Knights in like 7 games, I'll be disappointed, but, you know, it still will be impressive to see. Don't get me wrong. But let's see. Lions 1956, are you thinking about having kids soon? Not like right now. I'm 23 years old. You know, I still have time, you know. It's just one of those things where you have to find the right person. You have to, you know, exactly get married first, and then you'll have to make a plan to have a family, which is something I want one day for sure. But it's not anything that I'm like rushing to do this second per se. But yeah, let's see. Do I have an eye on Canadian politics? I actually do not. Oh, I mean, we paid attention to the elections here and there, but like, I don't like follow it nearly as closely as American politics. All right, I think this is the last super chat of the night, or the day. It's a rare day stream. Okay, we actually have 2. Okay, Lions 1956's house tour video. Please do it. I'm good being stationary, honestly. I don't think we need a whole tour. John Waffle H2 pieces thoughts on Sununu running. It's just going to take votes away from DeSantis in New Hampshire. So that'd be pretty funny if he actually did. And he'd lose the New Hampshire primary, by the way. Like, he's probably going to just run for governor again. And that'll be it. So make sure you guys like the stream, subscribe, hit the bell. I will see you guys in a video probably tomorrow. And we'll do the call-in stream on Wednesday. So I'll see you guys then. Red Eagle out.